Good evening, everybody, and you're very welcome to this session 4 of our Conversations with Special Olympics. This evening, I'm joined by our regional development officers from the 5 regions who work in the area of sport and sport development. And I want them all to introduce themselves. You see them all here on screen, but we go around and give everybody an opportunity to let you know who they are and where they're from. So I'll start with, as I see them on my screen, Emma.
Oh, thanks. So I'm Emma McMenamin. I'm the audio sport in Ulster, and I've been working for Special Olympics now since January 2006.
Okay, cool. Paddy, you're next up there.
Yeah, so Paddy O'Reilly, audio sport in the Leinster region, and I've been working with Special Olympics since 2009.
2009, and you started off in a different region, Paddy, and moved since.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to work in the Ulster region with Emma for 2 years, Emma, and then moved into the Leinster region in the clubs role initially, and then back over into the sports role this past 5 years, I think.
Okay, very good. Louise?
Hiya, yes, I'm Louise. I'm also from the Ulster region and on audio sport, and I've been with Special Olympics since November 2017.
Relatively new.
Relatively new, but came in with a very good baptism of fire, as some would call it, with the Ireland summer games. So it was great. It was a great experience.
Okay, very good. Niamh?
Hi, I'm Niamh Pentony. I am the audio for sport with the Eastern region, and I'm with Special Olympics since September 2019.
Oh, wow, even newer. Okay, very good. And below you, we have Padraig.
Yeah, I'm the other audio sport for the Eastern region. My name is Padraig Gallagher, and I've been a year in a row now since last May. So, yeah, you know. So.
Okay, so again, another relatively new member of the crew. You're very welcome to us, Padraig. Shaun.
Hi, yeah, I'm Shaun Hennessy, audio sport in the Munster region. Started back in 2005. So here with a while now. Work alongside Sandra as well. I just mentioned her. She's on maternity leave at the minute, so maybe to take this chance as well to wish her all the best. I'm not sure if she's tuned in, so we look forward to hearing some news in the next couple of weeks.
Brilliant, thanks, Shaun. And John.
Cheers, Elaine. Yeah, my name is John McNaboe. I'm the Sports Development Officer in Connaught, out west, and I've been in this role since 2006 as well, so around a while as well. And a bit like Shaun too, I work alongside Annette McGeaney, who's the other RDO for sport in the region, and Annette's on maternity leave at the moment and due back in the autumn. So
I'm sure you're looking forward to having Annette back to lessen the load a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good, and congratulations to Annette. She had a little baby girl there a couple of months back.
Yeah.
It was great news, and it is another addition to the crew. We kind of increase there every couple of years. I know 2 of you on screen here that were with us previously as student co-ops. I think Louise and Padraig, you did a co-op with us. Is that right?
Yeah, I did mine back in 2016, I think, and Paddy was actually in charge of me back then, so in Leinster. So I've back in the role again. But it was a great experience. I did 3 months with them as part of my student placement there, so that's good.
Okay, very good. And Louise, you were the same?
Yeah, I actually came from an events management placement, and I worked alongside Emma and another audio at the time. So yeah, I think it was about 5 years ago now, and that's actually starting to show my age.
Yeah.
We'll move on from that. But no, it was a great experience, and you get to meet some great people, and as Park says, your connections sort of last throughout, and it's people stay with the organisation. You can see a lot of familiar faces, so it's nice.
And you're all coming from various backgrounds in terms of your own education and what brought you into the job. Louise, you mentioned events there. Can anybody else tell us about their own background and how they came into the job?
I'll jump in with that one, Elaine. So I would have been leisure management in WIT, so recreation and leisure management. So a good and varied course. So we still take students from the RecMan course in WIT up until now. I would have done a placement when I was down there coaching with the Waterford Special Olympics Club, so just coaching five-a-side football, and that kind of got me the interest in Special Olympics. So graduated out of there and went into Meath Sports Partnership for 2 years, and where I worked as the Sports Inclusion Disability Officer, and then the opportunity came up to move to Special Olympics and back in 2009, and yeah, haven't looked back since.
Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I did a 4-year degree in UL of Sport and Exercise Science, and when I finished, after a few months of it working in the airport, totally different to this, I got a job with Louth County Council and kind of fed into the sports partnership that way. So I was based in Dundalk for a little while in the sports centre, running programmes, delivering programmes, and then moved to Drogheda, which is close to home for me. And I was kind of managing an athletics track, but we were running programmes in the track as well, to get people in and using the facility and out and active. So the job opportunity came up with Special Olympics, and I went for it thinking I was not going to get it, and delighted to be here now. So yeah, it's been good.
Okay, great. Anybody else there, John or Emma?
Yeah, sure. Oh, go ahead, John.
Go, Emma, go.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so listen, very similar story to the rest of the guys. Did a sports degree. Don't even remember what year now. That's telling my age if Louise is telling hers. Yeah, listen, it's probably similar story to everybody. Sport was probably the thing growing up that I liked most. It was the thing I was best at, really. And it was fairly obvious to go down the sports career path. And from the moment I started my degree, disability sport was always the aspect I was interested in. And it just kind of went from there, and worked down around home. I'm from Tyrone originally, so had worked down around there delivering programmes back sort of 2004, 2005, and then the job come up with Special Olympics in end of 2005, 2006, and yeah, I've just stayed since. It's just one of those places when you're in, it's hard to leave.
Job satisfaction is obviously important to all of you, and that's, you know, I think that's probably a sign of how long some of us stay with the organisation. I mean, I'm looking there down at Shaun. You mentioned there 2005, you know, 15 years in the role. Do you all still enjoy your job every day? What's your typical working week like?
Well, I suppose it's changed a lot in the 15 years or so that I've been here, you know, but I suppose core to it all still is delivery of competition is a huge part of what we do, and it's probably the piece that I, not speaking for everyone else, but it's the piece I enjoy most anyway. It's where you get out there, you get to see the benefit of the athletes training, and they get the opportunity to display their skills and so on. You get to meet everyone, you get to meet the volunteers and the athletes and so on. So that's, look, a big part of what we do is preparing for those events and delivering them, but it's probably the most enjoyable part as well, I would think.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose it's a typical day could be very varied, Elaine, I suppose, really, in the role. And that's probably what keeps the interest there. You know, you could be doing something in basketball in the morning time, and the next thing you're doing stuff for athletics, or you could be doing coach education stuff. So with all our sports, I suppose there's a great variation. So it keeps us fairly fresh and on our toes in terms of what we're doing. So there is a great variety there in terms of that. And you're talking maybe to clubs and coaches, you know, on a daily basis as well. So there could be loads of different things, you know, it keeps it very varied. And then you have your events coming. I suppose this year it'd be a busy year, you know, with area competition. So you could be talking about an event under normal circumstances every week. So again, you're out and about and meeting people and meeting the coaches and athletes, as Shaun said. So I suppose that's the beauty of it, really. It's a very varied role and keeps us fresh in it.
Yeah.
And John, would you think?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, John, you know, you mentioned the variety and things. A huge thing for me is meeting coaches from so many different backgrounds, you know, and they're all really passionate about their sport. And it's brilliant because you could have table tennis 1 minute and 10-pin bowling, athletics the next, you know, and learning from all those coaches and maybe thinking, right, that's what they do in table tennis, and maybe applying it to football, something completely different, you know, but seeing how a coach works in one sport and learning and applying it elsewhere and things, I think that's a really positive piece for me, you know, because everyone loves their own sport, but we've got the benefit of 13, 14 sports, you know, so it's great.
Emma, you were going to come in there.
Yeah, no, similar to the lads, I think, you know, you said there about some of us being here quite a long time, 15 years and 14 years, you don't see those years. It seems when you think about it, as someone who's been in the organisation 40 years, you think, man, 14 years is a long time, but it doesn't feel like it when you work for Special Olympics. And I think it's that variety. You're never going to be sitting on a day bored. It's never happened that you're sitting going, oh, I've nothing to do, or I'm bored, or I've nothing interesting to do. Generally what you're doing is interesting and it's challenging. You go from such unique sports like gymnastics to kayaking, and yeah, I think the time passes so quickly that you don't realise it, and I think that's a lot of the reason people do stay. It does challenge you every day in the job.
Yeah, and I suppose that is something that sets, as you know, as development officers in an NGB, a national governing body, I suppose we are very different in that, as Shaun mentions, we're covering 15 sports and a motor activities training programme. So that does make it very varied as opposed to working for an NGB themselves as a development officer on the ground. For the newer guys here on my right hand side, Niamh and Padraig in particular, is it what you would have expected coming into a job? You know, I mean, the others who were there 15 years probably don't remember college, but you're newer out of college in that. Is it what you would have expected when you looked at the job description?
It's absolutely not what I expected. I thought it was, I didn't know what I thought, but I didn't expect it to be as varied as the lads have said as it has been. I kind of was like, yeah, this will be great, you know, working for Special Olympics, great organisation. And then, like Louise mentioned earlier, baptism of fire, area events, year one of the cycle, and it was just like, whoa. So you just have to organise all this stuff, and then we'll get out to meet the athletes at events and see the development happening with leagues and stuff. Like, it was just like, whoa. But it's been fantastic all the same.
Okay, and Padraig?
Yeah, as well, I suppose I had a bit of experience going in before with Paddy, so I kind of had a little bit of an idea going into it, what it involved, but definitely, since I'm full-time in the role, I suppose spread across the 8 sports or whatever, it is a huge amount to take in, and I'm learning a lot about sports that I had no clue about, the likes of golf and stuff that I'm still not too sure about, but yeah, and that's what I said, the year goes really quickly because of that, because it is very varied, and you're learning every day, like learning a huge amount every day, so yeah, it's going quick, but it's good.
Yeah, it does go quick enough, all right, and as you mentioned there, we are talking about year one of a cycle. And for us, a cycle is 4 years. So, you know, an Ireland Games only comes around once every 4 years. So some of you haven't seen that yet. Whereas others, if I look around the screen here, I'm looking at Shaun, John, Paddy, Emma. How many Ireland Games have you seen so far?
I've been there for 4, I think.
Yeah,
You've been there for 4?
No, I'm
Belfast in 06.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure over the years, you know, things have changed dramatically in sport. Things that we were doing as common practice 15 years ago now certainly would be contraindicated, or certainly there's new learnings that come into play. And I think it is people like the Niamh and Padraigs and the Louises coming in fresh that kind of bring those fresh ideas and challenge those of us who were there a little longer. Maybe I'm not even going to mention how long I'm around. But it is definitely a challenge, and it is, I suppose it is something that we need to embrace a little bit in terms of challenging us to be that bit better. And also, I suppose, just on another note, in terms of the work you do, you know, sometimes we all get very focused on events, and we run a competition program. So we're running events, as you say there, John, every week. What other areas of sport do we work across?
I suppose one part of it, Elaine, that you'd like to dedicate more time to is the coach education and the development, so that you're working with the coaches, and we have some great people involved with at ground level, whether athletes coaching or athletes on a weekly basis. So just trying to be there as a support for them. So if they need information in the lead up to an event, or you're kind of building their kind of capacity over the years, you know, that they're doing coaching courses, and you see them moving from the intro levels all the way up to the level 1s and the level 2s. that is a big part of the job, and it really makes our job easier at the events if you do have good coaches working with the athletes, and it makes it a more positive experience for the athletes, the volunteers, the staff. So that is something, you get so bouncing week to week with your events and your leagues. Sometimes, that can slip, it's not your number one priority, but this has been a good chance now to reassess that and look at that again, that area, to make sure that we are there as a support for the coaches who are doing all the great work with the athletes. So that is one of my favourite parts, but it's probably something you don't get around to as much as you'd like to.
Yeah, in busy periods, it's a lot more difficult, that's for sure. Yeah.
I think the big focus on leagues the last 3 years, maybe more, has been a really good improvement in the programme as well. Like, I know our region, we only maybe had 1 or 2 leagues, whereas we're 6 or 7 now. So it's a different kind of competition. It's not a standalone big event with a big push. It's over a period of time, and each of the leagues is different, but it gives our athletes much more accessible competition, where maybe they were only getting some once every 4 years, or as part of their advancement. Now there is much more there for them, so that, to me, that's been a really nice side. And you get to go out to some of those league days and you're not running it, you're just coming out and seeing the fixture, and you're getting to chat to the athletes, and you actually get to watch them compete. Whereas so many times at events, people come up to you and go, "Oh, did you see how such did?" And I'm going, "No." I know how they did on Monday when I bring the GMS on board, and I'm going, "No, I have no idea how to," like, you genuinely, you're standing there, but you don't see some of the performances. So the leagues has been really good. You get to go out, and there's a lot of fun around them, and I think it's been a really good improvement, especially for our region anyway.
It's certainly a more relaxed environment for you, where you're not the hands-on person managing the event on the day with the crew of volunteers. So yeah, I get that. All right. Yeah, very good. And those leagues, as you mentioned, you've got 6 or 7 running. I mean, they're happening without too much intervention from you. Is that fair to say in most cases?
Yeah, by and large, it depends. They all run slightly different. Some of them are blitz formats, some of them are home and away, but by and large, no, we don't have a huge amount. The clubs really do take them on and run them themselves and arrange their fixtures. The blitz ones require a little more. We're quite fortunate in Ulster. We've good relationships, and we get students like Louise in, and they run them, and it's a great thing for them. But it doesn't
treat
require
them well and they come back. Yeah.
we treat them well and they come back. But no, it doesn't require anywhere near the level of work the likes of a single event would need. No, not at all.
And have any of you come into Special Olympics with a particular sports background yourselves in terms of your own participation?
Well, I suppose I would have been heavily involved in the GAA. I suppose I'm from a rural background, as to say, and the GAA was the heart of the community, and would have played and coached GAA from a young age, I suppose, like a lot of people. And I've done some coaching with soccer and things like that then, as well, as it would have come up. So it has been useful. I suppose it's not a sport we have, which in one way is good, I suppose, because you're not bringing that baggage perhaps, but you do bring the knowledge that you had there in certain aspects, and still involved, and you learn a lot. I think the GAA is a brilliant organisation, grassroots across Ireland, and
community led, very much like ourselves.
Yeah, and I think every NGB can learn, lots of stuff from them in the way that it operates and how it's run, so it's good from that background, that side of it. Happily retired at this stage, Elaine.
It was a lesser known county anyway, John, from a
lesser known county. Yeah. We won't mention
else there want to come in?
Yeah, I suppose I'd be still actively involved, I suppose, with my club at home, and I would have, played GAA all growing up, and soccer as well, so classic young Irish lad, soccer and GAA, the two of them. But I'm still actively involved. Fortunately, I suppose our championship and stuff like that has all been put on hold, I think, the way it's going, and clubs are still training, and we're not sure what's going to happen. But looking forward to get back into it now. Miss it, I suppose,
Yeah, I suppose from our own experience in Special Olympics, because you are so heavily invested and involved with our athletes at all throughout the year. What do you miss most at the moment with this, the whole restrictions that are in place?
I suppose I'll jump in here first. Like I do miss getting out, as Shaun's already touched on it. You know, you put a lot of work into you're planning your leagues and your events and everything else. And even if you get out to a club visit, you get to see the athletes, you know, doing well, socializing, like some of it's not even sporting related, some of it's, you know, personal achievements that they're making as well. I know some athletes, particularly in our own region, you know, you might have met them 6 months ago and they'd have had very little speech or, you know, very limited communication, and you're coming back and seeing them at an event and they're coming up and high-fiving you, and it's just it's all being achieved through sport, and you know, all the support with the volunteers are giving them as well. It's just, it does make you feel better, and it does make you realize what your job is, and you know, how every day what you're doing is actually helping people in multiple different ways, whether it's socialization, getting fitter, you know, making friends on Saturdays. And that's a big part of it for me anyway. Like, that's what I miss. I can't wait to be back. Like, maybe even a real meeting round a table. Like, I might even, you know, enjoy looking forward to that instead of all these video calls. But it's the climate in.
It's challenging, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Anybody else there?
as well, what I really look forward to is, you know, the morning of an event when you're first to arrive at the venue. So say the athletics track in CIT, and it's quiet, but there's that kind of air of anticipation. You know, you go in, you're first in, next thing the army arrive with the tents to put them up, and a few volunteers start to trickle in, and before you know it, you've got your 60 or 70 volunteers there, and first athletes are starting to arrive, and it's just building and building and building, and you know something big is happening there, you know. And then there's that point in the afternoon where you can just go, right, it's all going fine. I can sit down for 5 minutes and just sit back and watch it, you know, and enjoy and see the couple of races, because you probably, the track has been going with 3 or 4 hours and you haven't seen one race yet, you know. And it's just that feeling as well that, yeah, look, we've delivered, you know, the event is going well. Everyone is having a good time, and you get to sit and you get to watch those few races or that medal presentation and so on. And it's just, I just love the way it builds from the time you get there throughout the day to that point. Yeah, so that's, really look forward to getting back to that again.
Just to follow on from what Shaun was saying, I was just looking at the calendar and looking at the time now. We were due to be in Kilkenny today for our South Leinster athletics event, so by 11:30, you know, we should be we would have been up and running, and maybe the first medals were being presented by this stage. You know, everything, opening ceremonies finished, the first few races are started, field events started, all your volunteers are settled into their roles. But that is a massive part of what we do, and like Louise was saying, you know, you put so much work into it that, you know, when it does pay off and when you do see an event kind of functioning, it's a great pleasure and a big part of the job as well. So so I'm not in Kilkenny today, I'm in Dundalk today, so I'll have to plan my day out differently.
Okay, fair play. You know, when I look at the screen, I'm looking at, I don't know, an awful long number of years of experience on the screen. And it's incredible, you know, what you bring to the job, because it's not, you know, most RDO roles are a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And don't all laugh when I say that, because I know in Special Olympics, a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 for us as a staff team, it doesn't work, and it can't work. You know, we are working with volunteers who have day jobs, you know, family lives, and all that kind of stuff, no more than we have ourselves. But, you know, a lot of our events are Saturdays. A lot of our team meetings are week evenings, you know, 7 o'clock in the evening until 9 o'clock, and you're not getting home until 11. So I suppose from Special Olympics Ireland's point of view, you know, the role that you play is absolutely invaluable, and it is very much appreciated, knowing how much of your time you give up. And I know in busy periods, particularly at area advancement, you know, there's often at times where you might be working 3 weekends out of 4 for a couple of months, and that's not easy. So, you know, your time is appreciated. And I suppose just to kind of finish it off, you know, you've all talked about the parts you like about the job and how busy and varied it is. Do you have you know, a favourite moment or a highlight or a story that you'd like to share? As funny as you want, it doesn't make any difference, because all of these are, I suppose it's all an experience, good and bad.
I suppose, yeah. I suppose it has been great to see, you know, I've been lucky enough to be in the job a while, so it has been great to see, you know, new sports coming on board, the likes of our kayak and floorball, and to see our athletes, how quickly they can adapt and take on new sports and, you know, just thrive very quickly and really enjoy that. So, you know, to see the development in certain areas and in new sports like that has been great. I wouldn't pick out maybe an individual moment, you know.
Okay.
But that's been brilliant.
It's very hard to pick out because every event you go to, there probably is something at every event, to be honest, or every experience you have. It's hard to pick one moment. I suppose for me, like, we talk about the impact the program has on the athletes and the volunteers and all of that, but it's often sometimes it's, I think back to the 2018 games, I got a text message quite late in the evening from a parent, not a parent I would particularly know very well, not a parent I realized even had my number, to tell me what an amazing experience it was for her, not there seeing her daughter, just as a person, as a human, not as the mother of this athlete, that for her, how amazing it was. It was her first time that her daughter had been to an Ireland Games. But you get so many of those kind of messages, be it when you're standing in an event, be it on a Monday morning after a Saturday. And it's those little things. It's how wide you realise, you know, you're so caught up in doing your job and giving up those weekends and all that you talk about. You kind of sometimes don't always see that. And those moments make you realise how wide the effects of the programme are. It's not just the athletes and the volunteers there. It's actually the families, but it's beyond just them proud of their child. It's the impact that it has on their life. And those kind of moments for me are the ones that kind of make you go, yeah, do you know what? I'm quite happy to give up this weekend because I know, you know, it sounds corny, but it's kind of the truth, really. It's why most of us are still here.
I'm going to give two quick stories, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them is going back. It's probably 2007 or 8, and it's when we had five-a-side football, the football cup in UL, out in the 10 acres, or 5 pitches marked out or whatever. But in the Division 4 of the men's five-a-side, there was a game going on. I was standing with one of the coaches watching it. And it was one of these games where the ball went down to one end of the pitch and it stayed there until half time, you know. And then in the second half, the ball just was down the other end. But the ball was down by one end of the pitch for a couple of minutes. And next thing anyway, somebody got it and just hoofed the ball up the pitch up to the other end. And there was no sign of the goalkeeper up at the other end. And everyone's like, where's he gone? The Portaloo door bursts open. And he runs back out, picks up the ball as if nothing has happened. Cleared the ball. So it was just one of those moments that sticks with me. It was priceless, you know. But the other one is maybe a bit more serious in some ways. But an athlete at the last Ireland Games, it was his first Ireland Games, and he's a guy who speaks very little, even with family, very little communication. And we had called out to the table tennis venue the first day and met him, and everything was going great. He was having a great time and things. And his sister was telling me how big an experience the whole thing had been for him and how much he was starting to communicate a little bit more with people, be it within the squad and within his family and so on. But myself and Sandra met them the following day, and he came up to me and he had a gold medal around his neck, and he just went like that. He just held it up and said gold, and that was all he said. But that moment to us, you know, for a guy, we'd seen that development through being part of a Munster squad, and his family really believed that it was part of that squad that had instigated that whole development with him. So it was, it's a moment that really sticks with us. And I know Sandra's not on the call, but I think she'd be the same. We've often spoken about it since, you know, so it wasn't necessarily sport, but it was through sport that he had developed those skills, you know. So, yeah, that's a big moment for us as well. Yeah.
It's great to know that what we're doing has that impact, and it does. It certainly reminds us of why we do, as Emma said, what we do, and why we continue to come back, and why we've stayed the 15 years, the 20 years, the however long we're all around. You know, it's absolutely incredible. Anybody else, anything they'd like to share before we kind of wrap it up for today?
We've had it in my very limited time with Special Olympics so far, and because events were kind of put on hold at the minute. We've had a few nice ones, like we had a bocce in November and we had 50 TY students come in and give us a hand and volunteer, and we did a guard of honour as part of the opening ceremony for the athletes. And even just to witness that for 5 minutes, the athletes feel like they're the most important thing in the world for those few minutes going around. The TYs are loving it because they're shouting and screaming, woo, come on guys. And moments like that they only last for so little amount of time, but they're a lovely experience just to witness and be part of, and it sets the tone then for the whole day that it's just a bit of fun, and they're there to compete, but they're there to enjoy it, and it's so nice to see.
I think it's probably fair to say that the one thing that you're all looking forward to is going back to normal operations, if you like, and back to that interaction, that face-to-face interaction with athletes, because I know you're all staying involved in your regions with your clubs and all of that, and you're seeing all the stuff the athletes are doing on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all sorts of places that they're putting stuff up, which is brilliant. But there's nothing that can beat that atmospheric in the moment stuff with our athletes that we are all missing and all looking forward to getting back to. I'm going to leave it here for now for tonight. I think we've certainly covered a lot of ground, and I think it's important to note that you're the face of Special Olympics out there, running our events on a weekly basis and sometimes a daily basis, depending on how busy we are. So I thought it was important that people out there get to see your faces, particularly Padraig and Niamh and Louise, who are newer. I think, if you're at an event in Munster and someone says, "Where's Shaun?" they'll be able to pick Shaun out very quickly, or John or Emma and Paddy. But the newer guys, it's important that you get your presence out there just as much, and I thought this was an opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, we're missing Paul O'Reilly this morning. Paul is the second RDO for sport in Leinster, and Paul is new to the organisation. I think he's only been to one event actually since he started, before we had to stop operations. So Paul is there working with Paddy, and hopefully you'd all get to meet him sometime soon. I just want to thank you all for your time this morning, but also from my perspective, working with the 10 of you on a weekly basis and sometimes a daily basis over the last number of years. Certainly it's been my pleasure to assist you to run out the programmes in sport and development and coach education over the last number of years, and I look forward to continuing that work either virtually for now, but also when we get back to full operations. And as Louise said, we're physically sitting around the table and sharing a lunch again while we chat about sport and what's happening for us. So listen, thank you all very, very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.